Look, Skol Nation, we need to have a serious conversation. The 2026 NFL Draft is bearing down on us like a freight train. Pittsburgh is about to become the center of the football universe, and the Minnesota Vikings are sitting at pick number 18 with a roster so complete it almost feels illegal. No glaring holes, no panic positions, just a team on the doorstep of genuine Super Bowl contention, armed with a first-round pick and a decision that could define the next decade of Vikings football. So we brought in the heavy artillery, Dane Brugler's Beast Draft Guide, the most respected draft Bible in the business, and we went deep on Minnesota's top targets across rounds 1, 2, and 3. Strap in. This is going to get loud. Let's start with the elephant in the room. If you have looked at a single mock draft over the last 2 months, you already know the name. Dillon Thieneman, Oregon safety. The guy has been mocked to the Vikings so relentlessly, so repeatedly, so overwhelmingly, that it would be genuinely shocking at this point if it didn't happen. We are talking about mock draft after mock draft, analyst after analyst, from the smallest YouTube channels all the way up to ESPN and NFL Network. Everyone is landing on the same conclusion: Dillon Thieneman to Minnesota at pick 18. And here is the thing. It makes complete sense. Brugler describes Thieneman as a player who reminds him of Justin Reed, praising his scheme-friendly recognition skills, his eagerness to get busy as a run defender, and a versatility that should appeal to a whole range of defensive schemes. He projects as a durable NFL starter, and in Brian Flores' defense, that versatility is not just a nice-to-have. It is an absolute requirement. Flores does not want a safety who can only play free safety or only play strong safety or only play the box. He wants a chess piece who can do all of it, who can fly down into the slot and play some nickel corner if the moment demands it, who can roam single high and be a true center field threat when the situation calls for it. Thieneman checks every single one of those boxes. Think about what this kid has done athletically. He ran a 4.35-second 40-yard dash at the Combine. He recorded a 41-inch vertical jump. He put up 306 tackles and 8 interceptions over his college career. And scouts say he was one of the best players in the Purdue program from literally his first day on campus before transferring to Oregon and taking his game to an even higher level this past season. A Big Ten offensive coordinator who faced him said he felt Thieneman throughout the entire game, not just on big plays, but on every single snap. That is the kind of impact player who changes a defense from good to genuinely elite. With Harrison Smith's future uncertain after 14 legendary seasons in purple, the timing could not be more perfect. Thieneman is not just a replacement, he is a next-generation upgrade. But here is where things get really interesting. And this is where the Vikings situation becomes almost uniquely enviable among teams picking in the middle of the first round. Because Minnesota's roster is so complete, they do not have to force a pick at any position. They can genuinely look at whoever the best player available is when they walk up to that podium on April 23rd. And that opens the door to one of the most electrifying possibilities in this entire draft class: Jordan Tyson. Now, Tyson has been the most polarizing prospect in the 2026 draft, and that is not an exaggeration. One NFL GM texted Peter Schrager saying he didn't think Tyson would go in the top 20. Another GM texted Schrager saying he couldn't believe Tyson might fall all the way to 9. That is the range we are talking about. From falling out of the first round entirely to being a top 10 pick. And the reason for that wild variance is not his talent. Nobody debates his talent. Mel Kiper Jr. himself said Tyson would be the undisputed WR1 in this draft if not for the injury concerns. ESPN's analysts called him a potential Pro Bowl and All-Pro caliber player if he stays healthy. The issue is a 4-year college career that has seen him deal with a catastrophic torn ACL, MCL, and PCL during his freshman year at Colorado, a broken collarbone that cut his 2024 season short, and a hamstring injury that limited him in 2025. But here is what Brugler said about Tyson, and it is worth paying close attention to. He described Tyson as a sleek, twitched-up athlete who can create his own separation and win outside his frame at the catch point, projecting as an NFL starter inside or outside with a skill set that draws comparisons to Stephon Diggs. And that comparison is not a throwaway line. It is exactly right. Tyson's long strides let him bend roots at the top of his stem at an extremely high level. His releases are genuinely elite, the kind of release package that reminds you of Justin Jefferson and Devonta Adams, where the corners simply cannot tell where he is going because his stems and breaks are so clean, so disguised, so impossible to anticipate. Over his last 2 healthy seasons at Arizona State, Tyson totaled 136 receptions for 112 yards and 18 touchdowns. When he is on the field, he is a monster. The question is whether he stays on the field. Here is the chess move that makes the Tyson pick potentially genius for the Vikings specifically. If you draft Tyson at 18 and he becomes exactly what his tape suggests he can be, you suddenly have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Tyson as your 1-2 receiver punch, arguably the most terrifying wide receiver duo in the entire NFL. That gives you the leverage to potentially move Jordan Addison in a trade for more draft capital. You solve WR3 naturally from within, you net a second-round pick for Addison, and you have positioned this offense as basically unguardable for the next half-decade. That is a home run swing. That is the kind of bold move that wins championships. Now, if the Vikings pass on Tyson and decide to go defense at 18, and the smart money still says safety is likely, then the conversation shifts to whether it's Thieneman or the other safety prospect who has been flying up boards over the last several weeks, Emmanuel McNeill-Warren out of Toledo. ESPN's Peter Schrager, who is known for basing his mock drafts on what he's actually hearing from around the league, put McNeill-Warren in that Viking slot in his most recent projection. That is significant. Schrager does not guess. When Schrager hears noise, he writes it down. Brugler described McNeill-Warren as an impressive-sized athlete on the back end who is at his best when roaming, reading his keys, floating the ball in coverage, and quickly closing space. He has the rangy tools to push for starting safety reps as an NFL rookie and projects as a day-one impact player. Now, people hear Toledo and they think lower competition, longer development curve. But when you turn on McNeill-Warren's tape, you do not need advanced scouting experience to identify the NFL talent. It jumps off the screen immediately. His closing speed is elite. His ability to cover tight ends and slot receivers is genuinely impressive. And crucially, the Vikings are not in a developmental phase right now. With Kyler Murray under center and a roster built to win, you want a player who can help immediately. McNeill-Warren does that. Brugler also has cornerback Jamarian McCoy in the first-round conversation for Minnesota, and if you have been watching this draft process unfold, you know McCoy's name has come up early, and often in Vikings discussions. The Tennessee corner ran a 4.38 at his pro day and looked completely healthy doing it, impressive considering he tore his ACL roughly 15 to 16 months ago. Brugler acknowledges McCoy needs to tighten his discipline against NFL competition, but praised his twitch, his spatial instincts, and his ball skills as tools that should produce plays in coverage at the next level. If McCoy is on the board at 18, if the Cowboys and other CB-needy teams don't grab him earlier, the Vikings absolutely have to consider it. In Flores' secondary, a corner with McCoy's athleticism and ball skills would be a weapon. And then there is the wild card, the name that makes draft analysts do a double take when they see it mocked to the Vikings at 18, Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq. Now look, tight end is not a burning immediate need in Minnesota. TJ Hawkinson is still on the roster, at least for now. But NFL teams believe Sadiq has the talent to be a top 10 pick, and multiple reports indicate the Vikings are genuinely committed to taking the best player available at 18 regardless of position. Sadiq ran a 4.38 40-yard dash. He recorded a 44-inch vertical leap. He is 6'3" and 245 pounds and built like a Marvel character. Brugler describes Sadiq as a player with mismatch-creating potential because of his ability to out-quick and out-tough defenders as both a pass catcher and a blocker, projecting him as a versatile Vernon Davis-like weapon with his best football still ahead of him. If you put Sadiq on a field with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, or whoever eventually lines up opposite Jefferson, and a tight end with Sadiq's freakish athleticism, coordinators will be drawing up schemes all week and still showing up on Sunday with nothing good enough to stop it. The tight end room needs an upgrade eventually. TJ Hawkinson's deal runs out. Why not get the tight end of the future right now when he might be the best player on the board? Shifting to round 2, pick 49, and quarterback Chris Johnson out of San Diego State enters the picture as a fascinating value target. Brugler praised Johnson for a combination of instincts, eyes, and athletic movement skills that allow him to consistently make plays on the football, projecting him as someone who should compete for a starting role on day one, while also contributing on special teams. And that last part matters enormously for the Vikings. This is a franchise that values special teams in a way most organizations simply do not. They lost Ryan Wright but immediately brought in a replacement. They have arguably the best kicker in football in Will Reichard. When you have a wide receiver prospect who also offers genuine special teams value that is not a secondary consideration in Minnesota, it is a meaningful part of the evaluation. Also, in the second-round conversation for Minnesota, Georgia linebacker C.J. Allen. The heat has cooled slightly on Allen, possibly sneaking into the first round, but the case for him at pick 49 is compelling. He wore the green dot for Georgia this past season. Kirby Smart's defense, arguably the most complex and disciplined defensive scheme in all of college football, and Smart does not hand that responsibility to anyone he does not completely trust. Allen had 205 career tackles, 4.5 career sacks, and 13.5 tackles for loss. Brugler compared his potential impact to Nick Bolton's, and that is a really useful frame. Not a flashy superstar, but a football IQ machine who makes everyone around him better by always being in the right spot. Allen does have some zone coverage limitations, but watch him meet running backs in the hole and you see a guy who genuinely loves to hit. That wanna cannot be coached. Minnesota's defensive tackle need also comes into focus in round 2, where Lee Hunter becomes a very interesting name. Hunter had a somewhat confusing draft process. Initially projected as a potential second-rounder, then briefly flirting with first-round grades and now settling back into that day 2 range. Brugler noted that Hunter lacks the pass rush arsenal to consistently impact the quarterback, but called him instinctive as a run defender with heavy hands capable of making stops at the line of scrimmage, projecting him as a scheme-diverse 2-gap nose tackle. Now put that next to Jalen Redmond, who many around the league are calling the best player on the entire Vikings defense, and you might just have your defensive tackle duo of the future. Redmond disrupts everything offensively. Hunter next to him clogs the run and frees Redmond to wreak havoc. It is a beautiful partnership on paper. For the third round, the center position becomes priority number 1, and Brugler's top-ranked center in this class is Jake Slaughter out of Florida. The assessment is that Slaughter lacks overwhelming traits, but consistently does his job using controlled movements, stout strength, and veteran processing skills, projecting as someone who should compete for starting center reps as a rookie. And for the Vikings, that description is honestly perfect right now. Land Slaughter at pick 82. Let him compete with Blake Cashman for starting reps, and suddenly the offensive line, with Donovan Jackson already locked in, with Brian O'Neill being one of the most underrated tackles in football, with the rest of the unit coming together, has its long-term 5-man core in place. Continuity on an offensive line is worth its weight in gold. Chemistry between those 5 guys does not happen overnight, but when it does, when a quarterback has the same 5 guys protecting him for years at a time, and they know every stunt, every blitz, every situation by feel, it is almost impossible to disrupt. Get Slaughter. Nail the center position. Let this offensive line become one of the most consistent units in the league for the next half-decade. Arizona safety Traden Stokes rounds out the third-round targets as a versatile option with the ability to play big nickel or single high safety. Brugler called Stokes instinctive with quiet confidence and valuable scheme flexibility, projecting him as a nickel defender with outside and single high upside. And this connects to something important about how modern NFL defenses actually work. The days of the small, quick slot corner are fading. The Vikings themselves showed it last season. When your slot defender is playing the run on 40% of snaps, you need size and physicality, not just quickness. Stokes fits that modern profile. So here's where it all lands for Skol Nation. The Vikings are sitting at pick 18 with options most teams at that spot would dream about. All roads statistically and analytically point toward Dillon Thieneman, the Oregon safety whose athleticism and versatility make him almost a perfect schematic match for what Flores is trying to build. But the wild card of Jordan Tyson, a potential superstar wide receiver whose injury history has created one of the most fascinating boom or bust scenarios in recent draft history, cannot be ignored if he is somehow still on the board. And if the Vikings truly commit to best player available the way their front office has indicated, Kenyon Sadiq's freak athleticism might just be too much to walk away from. The draft is coming, Skol Nation. Pittsburgh is about to be purple. Drop your dream pick for the Vikings at 18 down in the comments right now. Are you riding with Thieneman, swinging for the fences with Tyson, or pulling the trigger on someone completely different? Make your pick, make your case, and let's debate it. And if you are new around here, smash that subscribe button and join the best Viking fan community in the entire game. Skol Nation does not sleep on draft season. Let's go, Vikes.